Hi, my name is Elijah, and I will be talking about the Great Depression and World War II today. After World War I, we entered into the Roaring Twenties. Sadly, this burst didn't last long because by the end of the 20s, we entered the Great Depression. The Great Depression was caused by three major factors: the uneven distribution of wealth, overproduction, and decreasing demand for goods. The uneven distribution of wealth occurred because the working class didn't have enough money to buy the products that they made. Factories and farms were producing too many goods, causing a decreased demand for their goods. This caused banks to foreclose on some farmers, and this caused many of them to cut back on production, causing many to lose their jobs. The Great Depression was a hard time for Americans. Psychologically, many people felt hopeless because they couldn't provide for their families. This This caused a social effect in which many people filed for divorce. People then began to stop trusting the government and banks and were very angry at them. And since systems like the stock market are built on image, it crashed. Our situation also affected the world because our economy, many of our banks removed loans and investments from Europe. We also set off a chain reaction of high tariffs causing the world trade to drop. It also dropped when banks failed in places like Central Europe and when industries like agriculture or production were doing badly in countries like Japan and Latin America. Around the world, many governments dealt with the depression differently. In England, they placed high tariffs, increased taxes, and regulated currency. Unlike England, instead of regulating currency, Germans decided just to print more money, which made their money practically useless. Unlike the Germans, though, the United States made changes through the democratic system. FDR was elected president and created a half socialist, half capitalist program. Despite the extremely expensive program, unemployment was still high here. Unemployment was also high in France, even though the French tried fighting unemployment by increasing worker pay and benefits. The United States, as I said before, elected FDR as the 32nd president to fix our problems. His New Deal created mass relief programs, fought unemployment through public work projects, investments in business and agriculture, and regulated stocks and banks. FDR had an important role during the Great Depression because of his new plan and the programs that came with it. The New Deal consisted of 15 programs. The AAA helped farmers by protecting them from price drops. The CWA was a program to help with the unemployment policy and provided 4 million workers with a salary of $15 a week. The NYA employed more than 2 million high school workers. Because of FDR, actions politically we stopped the United States from flipping into fascism or communism. The New Deal also gave the federal government huge influence in the economy and people's lives. It also gave us programs like the FDIC, Social Security, the Securities Exchange Commission. There were also causes of World War II that came from the previous World War. The treaties of Versailles, the Great Depression faction aggression, and Allied appeasement were all causes of World War II. The Treaty of Versailles, which marked the end of World War I, caused a lot of hatred toward the Weimar Republic from the German citizens because they believed that they gave up the war. This crippled the government, making it easier for Hitler to take over as chancellor. The Allied appeasement also was one of the starting points for World War II. At the start of World War II, Hitler began conquering smaller countries that he wasn't supposed to take. Because of appeasement from allies, it let Germany have the land so they could avoid war. They let Germany have the land so they could avoid war. Sorry. Finally, the Great Depression fashions agreement was also a factor of the war because everybody turned a blind eye toward it while they were conquering different countries until it became a problem. Most countries had a similar response, which was to make peace. Great Britain, France, the US, and Russia all tried to find peace until war was declared in 1940s. In Asia, other than Russia, Japan pretty much had free reign over Southeast Asia, taking parts of Indochina and the Philippines. They all wanted peace for different reasons, though. In Britain and other European countries, they were still recovering from the previous war. The United States didn't want to go into it because they were isolationists. The war occurred around the world, but mostly in Europe, Russia, Asia, and North Africa. Naval battles also occurred in the Pacific Ocean theater and throughout its surrounding areas. One major naval battle that happened was the Battle of Midway. This battle was important because the United States inflicted heavy damage on the Japanese Navy. This was a turning point because it was the first major naval battle victory for the U.S., and it was a big turning point because it allowed travel from east to west and vice versa. Another major battle that took place was the Battle of Berlin because it was the final major attack of the European theater. This was an important turning point because it was a battle in which Hitler committed suicide, and it was the unconditional surrender of Berlin. Finally, another important turning point was the Battle of Almheim. This was important because it showed the world that Germans could be beaten, and it was also began their expulsion from North Africa. Military technology experienced rapid advances during World War II, and over few years, there was a huge jump in the way combat was fought, including everything from aircraft to small arms. The war began with most armies utilizing technology that had changed little from World War One. In some cases, had remained unchanged since the 19th century. The war began with cavalry trenches in World War One era battleships, but within only 6 years, armies around the world had developed jet crafts, or in the case of the U.S., atomic weapons. As I previously have stated, we came into the war through different steps because we were isolationists. Prior to the beginning of World War One or World War Two, tensions were built between the United States and Japan due to Japanese and China and Pacific in the China and Pacific theater. In 1940, the Japanese entered World War II on the side of Germany. In early 1941, the U.S. ceased exporting oil to Japan as an act of punishment. Then they rebelled with an attack on the military base near Pearl Harbor. This was the hope of the Japanese was to destroy the U.S. Navy with this attack, but they failed to do so. The next day, on 1941, December 8th, the U.S. declared war on Japan and entered World War II. The war changed American society in many ways. Since we were in total war, the government had directed everything from the war effort since most males were away and females had the responsibility of taking their jobs and running the country. This created a huge jump in unemployment. Many women and African Americans were deployed during this time. During this time, the Japanese Americans were being discriminated against because of Pearl Harbor. The Mexican Americans were also being discriminated against because of their zoot suits was a waste of material and they were hated even though they came to fill the worker gap. The youth also were influenced through political cartoons and other form of propaganda. Finally, in order to end the war, we dropped 2 bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I believe it was the best way to end a militaristic state of mind for a country that had a no quitting, no matter what attitude. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was also important because it showed the improvement in military technology that we had gained. The bombs killed an estimated 246,000 people combined. The bombs also killed people because of radiation, though often debated. Most have come to consensus that it was the reason that the Japanese had surrendered. There were many effects of the war. Short term, the amount of deaths caused by the Holocaust was 11 million. A long term effect was the Cold War. This happened because at the end of the war, there were only two superpowers left, the US and the Soviet Union. These two nations fought over the political system in Germany. The Soviet Union wanted it to be communist, while we wanted democracy. These tensions would last until the late 1980s, since no one wanted to start war after the massacres of World War II. Another long-term effect was the creation of Israel. Israel was created when Britain gained control of Palestine. It was then given to UN to divide it out to Jews and the Arabs. Even though there's a disagreement, the Jews still declared the state of Israel. The United Nations was also a long-term effect because of the war in order to keep peace. During this time, many had to go through desperate times in order to get what they wanted. In Germany, many were starving and faced tough times, making them desperate enough to believe in Hitler's fascist ideas. Even though some knew it was wrong, they allowed Jews and other minorities to be put through concentration camps, and they gave up their rights under Hitler's fascism. We as Americans also went through extreme measures to get what we wanted. As a nation, we performed one of the most horrific war tragedies of all, the bombing of the Japanese cities. Also, as a country, we did something we never had done before. We let minorities and women run the country. We also sided with what would be one of our worst enemies, the Soviet Union, to take down the Nazis.